kunja vihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa Vaidvyadhikacharya Asto Tarasatasi Srimad Divine Grace of Charanarvada Bhakti-yoga Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa Vaidvyadhikacharya Asto Tarasatasi Srimad Divine Grace of Bhakti Santa Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Sri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai Nitai Gaura Premanande All glories to the sum of the devotees. All glories to the sum of the devotees. All glories to the sum of the devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Padaya Srimati Bhakti-vedanta Swami Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Vachani Vishesha Srimyavadi Prastatari Chatari. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayana Namaskritya Narang Chaiva Naruttamam Deving Saraswati Vyasam Ito Jame Udirayet Nasta Prayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Utama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd canto, Chapter 31, entitled The Movements of Living Entities. Text number 36? 36. Prajā-patiḥ duhitaram Prajā-patiḥ duhitaram dṛṣṭvā tad-rūpa-dharṣitaḥ dṛṣṭvā tad-rūpa-dharṣitaḥ rohid-bhūtāṁ nvadhāvad rohid-bhūtāṁ nvadhāvad ṛkṣa-rūpī hata-trapaḥ ṛkṣa-rūpī hata-trapaḥ prajā-patiḥ svāṁ duhitaram dṛṣṭvā tad-rūpa-dharṣitaḥ rohid-bhūtāṁ nvadhāvad ṛkṣa-rūpī hata-trapaḥ ṛkṣa-rūpī hata-trapaḥ. ṛkṣa-rūpī hata-trapaḥ duhitaram tad-rūpa-dharṣitaḥ rohid-bhūtāṁ nvadhāvad ṛkṣa-rūpī hata-trapaḥ prajā-patiḥ duhitaram dṛṣṭvā rohid-bhūtāṁ ṛkṣa-rūpī hata-trapaḥ. Ladies. Prajā-patiḥ, Lord Brahma, son his own, duhitaram, daughter, dṛṣṭvā, having seen, tat-rūpa, by her charms, dṛṣṭvā, bewildered, rohit-bhūtāṁ, to her in the form of a deer. Saha, he, anvadhāvat, ran, ṛkṣa-rūpī, in the form of a stag, bereft, shame. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, shamelessly, bhakti-yoga Swami Prabhupada. Translation. At the sight of his own daughter, Brahma was bewildered by her charms and shamelessly ran up to her in the form of a stag when she took the form of a hind. Purport. Lord Brahma is being captivated by the charms of his daughter, and Lord Śiva is being captivated by the Mohinī Murti, by the Mohinī form of the Lord, are specific instances which instruct us that even great demigods like Brahma and Lord Śiva, what to speak of the ordinary conditioned soul, are captivated by the beauty of a woman. Therefore, everyone is advised that one should not freely mix even with one's daughter, or with one's mother, or with one's sister, because these senses are so strong that when one becomes infatuated, the senses do not consider the relationship of daughter, mother, or sister. It is best, therefore, to practice controlling the senses by performing bhakti-yoga, engaging in the service of Madana-mohana. Lord Kṛṣṇa's name is Madana-mohana, for he can subdue the god Cupid, or lust. Only by engaging in the service of Madana-mohana can one curb the dictates of Madana, or Cupid. Otherwise, attempts to control the senses will fail. Om Jnanatimidandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurmritam Jena Tasmai Sigurave Ukam Brodi Vachalam Bangam Langaya Degirim Yakipadamande Siguram Dinataranam Paramananda Madhava Sri Chaitanya Ishwaram. Very instructive verse. This whole section is quite instructive for the present age. Because due to the degradation of Kali Yuga, the activities, the sinful activities of the living entities are exponentially increasing. Srila Prabhupada comments in one letter that to become agitated is not a very great thing. As we're seeing here in the example of Brahmā and Lord Śiva, what to speak of ordinary conditioned souls. So to be captured or to be agitated is not a very great thing. But to control it, that is the real thing. And the unfortunate condition of the present age is that incest is a very common thing. It's a very common activity, degraded activity in Kali Yuga. Here, Lord Brahma is bewildered what to speak of ordinary living beings, so that when you hear such ghastly accounts of how someone has been assaulted by a family member, it's okay. Well, another one to add to the list. It's the unfortunate situation in the Kali Yuga, in this degraded age, where such activities are, they're not not uncommon, but they're not, what would be the word, revealed or discussed or explained or brought out enough. So that to the point where it becomes just a very common thing. And this is the immoral situation in society. Srila Prabhupada comments in his Shikshamrita that immoral sex and spiritual advancement are incompatible propositions. Sex is allowed there within the confines of Vedic principles. That's fine. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati even comments that, I can't remember the exact comment, but it was something to the effect that if I could, I would produce 100 children. But the intelligence has to be there. And Srila Prabhupada also makes that comment in citing the example of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who himself said that when I see the wooden form of a woman, I become agitated. But that does not mean we give it practical shape. We don't give it practical shape. There may be agitation. It's no surprise, because even Lord Brahma, and even in the example of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he warns us that the agitation is there, but what do you do to control it? That is the real thing. It doesn't mean that we give it a practical shape. That is intelligence, Prabhupada comments. That is intelligence. We don't give it practical shape. One has to be convinced that sex without exception is troublesome, is trouble. You're asking for trouble. No matter how you look at it, without exception, you're asking for trouble. Because not only are you implicating, or you're making yourself vulnerable to bad association, but you're allowing the senses to act unrestrictedly. Even the example we often hear is of a Sabari Muni or Vishwamitra, great sages who are very powerful, who became agitated just by some little tinkling or some couple fishes. What to speak here of Lord Brahma. So agitated or disturbed that one is chasing after one's own daughter. Of course, Lord Śiva, also he became attracted to the form of Mohinī Murti. We know that pastime where she takes the nectar, pot of nectar from the demons and shares it with the devotees, demons, away from the demons and with the devotees. So there has to be intelligence, this element of intelligence. And it begins by not thinking. One has to stop at the thinking stage and not allowing the feeling, much less the willing, right? We have thinking, feeling, and willing. So Srila Prabhupada comments that one has to stop at the thinking stage, at least, and he comments that there's no particular sinful reaction for that until one is feeling and then willing, and then we're asking for serious trouble. So the problem is that as soon as the living being, because he's conditioned, right? Ichcha dvesha samuktena dvanda mohina bharata, Kṛṣṇa explains in the Bhagavad Gita, that the living entities are bewildered, the conditioned living entities are bewildered by the dualities of sarvabhuta samoham. They fall into this deluded condition, thinking that now it's an opportunity for me to enjoy, right? Purusha prakritistohi, Kṛṣṇa explains in Bhagavad Gita that the living being, he becomes so confused that he follows the ways of life, enjoying the three modes of material nature. And thus he meets with good and evil amongst various species, whether it be the demigods or whether it be some lowly animal in the street. Sometimes we hear the example of the hogs, who we heard this the previous class that Indra was quite confused, you could say, by his hog life. So much so that he didn't want to give it up. So Lord Brahma had to come and remove his family members. And finally he woke up to the fact that, what am I doing here? So the living being, as soon as he, as Kṛṣṇa says in Bhagavad Gita, dhyato vishyam pungsang sangaseshu bhajayate, as soon as he begins to contemplate this condition that we've fallen into, one develops an attachment, right? We're thinking about it, and then all of a sudden, the feeling starts happening, right? Sangasteshu bhajayate. Sangat sanjayate kama kama krodha vijayate. Then when that thinking is not satisfied, the anger arises. Krodhat bhavati samoha, samoha smriti vibhrama. And then finally, one is so overwhelmed by uncontrolled senses that he falls into this material condition. And Prabhupada explains that it's just like a shirt and coat. Just like you have a coat, just like your body may have a coat, right, or a chadar. That is the gross covering. And then we have the shirt, which is a finer covering, and Prabhupada compares that to mind, intelligence, and false ego. We have the gross covering, which is this coat, and then there's a finer covering of the mind, intelligence, and ego compared to the shirt, which is covering the body. So in this way, the living being is gradually entangled. The first level of attachment is that one begins to desire it. And then the second level is that one identifies with it. Not only do I want it, but now I'm totally identifying with it. The mind, intelligence, and ego, they're completely captivated. And as a result, one falls into this condition. And what can be said that even a great demigod will identify yasyatma buddhi kuni petridadu ke sadi kaladri shiboma ijati. Then you're convinced that I'm this body made of gross elements, and that those things which are in relationship to this body are mine eternally, and that this boma ijadi, that the place of birth becomes worshipable. Nowadays, we're seeing how people are fighting like anything over some dirt, over some line in the dirt. You cross this line, then we're going to start throwing weapons and all-out war. Unfortunately. Or going to holy places. Holy places means just to take a bath. There's water there. Let's take a bath in that particular place. No matter if it's Brahma Sarovara. Right? Lord Brahma took bath there. Brahma Sarovara. So you just go there. It doesn't matter. Just take a bath. It becomes a sporting event. Actually, I remember that when the first time we went to, not the first time, but when we went to Radhakund, and finally the permission was given that the devotees could take bath in Radhakund. Previously they weren't allowed. You could go there and sprinkle some water, that's fine. But actually the devotees were allowed to go into the water. So what happened when one or two buses, I don't know, there were just a ton of devotees. We went to Radhakund for circumambulating, and the devotees jumped in and it turned it into a Olympic swim. They were going back and forth across Radhakund. Can you imagine? These white bodies, like little ants, floating or swimming back and forth, yelling, whooping and splashing. When the word got back to Prabhupada, it was stopped immediately. No more. Instead of having an Olympic swim, you could go there and simply take a respectful water on the head. So, unfortunately, going to the holy places and simply taking a bath because you're tired or exhausted or something, and not taking advantage of these sadhus who are living in such places and taking instruction from them. Such a person is no better than a cow or an ass. This is the condition in the Kali Yuga, where even no matter what your condition is, simply by that association with the material energy, one becomes degraded. That is the unfortunate condition of modern society. And as we're reading here, even great demigods like Lord Brahmā and Lord Śiva can become captivated. Therefore, what is the solution? Everyone is advised to not freely mix, even with one's daughter. Chanakya Pandit also warns that one should not sit in a solitary place with one's sister, mother, daughter. It's because the mind is so, and we're not just talking, it's not just men, but it's also women. It works both ways. It's not that, just like in the previous verse, it's described that attachment to a woman or to the fellowship of men who are fond of women. So it's not just a one-directional caution, but it works in all circumstances because we're, again, conditioned by the material energy in whatever form or whatever situation you are in this world. So the solution, the advice given here, as Prabhupada points out, is to practice controlling the senses by performing bhakti-yoga. And Kṛṣṇa says that right in Bhagavad Gita, tasmāt tvam indriyāni ādau niyamya bharatarsham. Niyama, that one has to control by regulation. That's the idea. The process of bhakti-yoga means to control these conditions, these senses, these desires, by the activities of bhakti-yoga, by the regulations of bhakti-yoga. And Lord Brahma also gives that advice, right? What is that? He recommends in the 10th canto Bhagavatam, where he states that the process of bhakti is the best process for a self-realization. Shreya Shritim Bhakti Mutasya Devi Go. Klishantiye Kevala Bhuta Labdhaye. He very nicely describes how the process of bhakti is the best means because it engages everything. It engages the body, mind, and senses in practical, positive work, activity. And we all have experience that when that activity is not there, then the mind tends to wander off, right? We start imagining and fantasizing, and it could be like this, or what if I did, it goes on. And one is totally confused and loses the impetus, loses the drive or the determination. Instead, everything becomes very troublesome, as Kṛṣṇa says in Bhagavad Gita. It becomes difficult and troublesome. These other ways and means, they become very troublesome and difficult. But the process of bhakti is so nice that it engages everything to the point where one is fixed in his determination, as Prabhupada again points out, that it's not at all surprising the struggle or the challenge that one gets with agitation, but it's the real thing. The real thing is, what do you do with it? How do you address it? And he's giving the clear answer here. It is therefore best to practice controlling the senses by performing bhakti-yoga, engaging in the services of Madana-mohana. And why Madana-mohana is because Madana-mohana is so attractive that even Cupid, Madan, or lust, even Cupid himself perspires upon seeing the form of Kṛṣṇa. He becomes so moved emotionally that even Cupid becomes attracted and disturbed by the form of Kṛṣṇa. Therefore, he's called Madana-mohana, or he who attracts thousands of Cupids. And there's a very nice discussion between Subal and Kṛṣṇa, in which they're standing off to the side and they're discussing the beauty of the gopis. And Subal says, this is the work of Cupid, that he's sending these beautiful gopis to distract or to attract he who is attracting the whole universe. There's some irony there, of course. And Kṛṣṇa just smiles. So the activities of Kṛṣṇa are the most attractive, and if we can summarily become attracted to them, this lesser attraction, Mayavesha manoyamam nityam yuktu pasate, Kṛṣṇa says in Bhagavad Gita, that one should fix his mind upon my personal form. Just as we're able to see the beautiful form of the deity every day, if one can fix his mind upon that beautiful form with great and strong faith and determination, that person is the greatest of all yogis. He's the most perfect. So the lesson we can learn from all of this is that to become attracted to Kṛṣṇa should be the goal of all of our works. And these lesser attractions, these distractions that are presented by the material energy, by Maya, by even Cupid, become inconsequential. They're not important. Instead, if one can just fix his mind upon the personality of Godhead, then life is perfect. Srila Prabhupada comments, quotes one verse, Asango yayam purushaha, which means that the living entity is not really connected to this material world, but due to a tendency, he becomes attracted. Now, we're not connected, but due to tendency, one becomes confused and attracted to the material energy. So that enjoying spirit is there because it comes from Kṛṣṇa, of course. But how to utilize it? That is the real test. So we'll end there. Are there any questions or comments? Rabindranath Prabhu?
You were reading about how men and women shouldn't be alone together. So how can we practically do that in this age?
Well, that's an excellent question, because we're surrounded and we're so easily mingling and associating. By practical example, we can see when we analyze the activities of the acharyas, they were very careful in their association. Very careful. It's not that you become loose. We can do seva, that's fine. But we don't engage in casual, just loose activity. There's 7, 8 different forms of illicit sex, right? Associating 8, yeah. So we have to be mindful of those things. We're living in an age where certainly the mixing is done so freely, but that doesn't mean that, as Prabhupada comments in this letter that I quoted earlier, that it's not that we give it practical shape. We don't give it practical shape. We don't allow it to manifest. There may be some thinking, and of course that's even there within the example of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But what is it that you do about it? So the solution is to, at least from what I can understand, is to engage yourself in practical, regulated devotional service, so that there is no time to think of such silly things.
Yeah, well, I understand that. Associations in devotional service is there, but I'm particularly asking about if a man and woman are alone together. That's my question.
If a man and woman are what?
Alone together. So, that comes up sometimes, and so how do we deal with that?
And not husband and wife?
Not husband and wife. Well, here it was given the extreme example of mother, sister, and daughter, and then people that aren't married to each other. So, being alone, how do we deal with that? Because sometimes it may come up.
Well, again, in devotional service, sometimes there's a situation where you're in the kitchen, or you may be on the altar, or you may be working on some project. So you surround yourself with some Krishna conscious conversation or sounds. I don't know, you can't put up a wall between the two of you. That's not practical. Put up a curtain everywhere you walk. That's not practical. But it's incumbent upon us as devotees to be mindful and keep the conversation, if there needs to be, on a Krishna conscious level. There's Krishna conscious sounds, there's Krishna conscious conversation. That would be my answer. I'm sure there's many more if others want to add to it, but I think that as one progresses and matures in devotional service, one should be mindful that we don't have just a loose conversation, but that it be centered around the devotional activities that we're engaged in, or Krishna, or what is it that Krishna is saying, or what is it that the spiritual master said, and then add some transcendental sound vibrations so that we don't have to be put in an uncomfortable or dangerous situation. But again, we're living in an age where it's freely mixed, and Prabhupada recognized that. But he also gave many instructions through his letters and through the Shastras here, how one should be very careful to keep oneself strong and protected. That would be my answer. Any other comments on that? All right. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.